My children left me in this old house years ago. They haven't come back since. Not once. I've waited, called, cried, and hoped, but the silence only grows heavier with each passing day. This house, once filled with laughter and warmth, now feels like a hollow memory, every corner whispering the absence of those I raised with all my heart. Before I go any further, I want to ask you something. If you've ever felt forgotten by the ones you love the most, left waiting with nothing but hope and echoes, leave a comment below. Tell me where you're listening from. Stay with me through this story, because what I am about to share is not just about me. It's about the quiet heartbreak of countless mothers, fathers, and elders who wait and wait and wait for people who may never return. For the past for years, I have lived in this old house, in the quiet corners of an old home. 3 years of mornings that begin with aching joints, stiff fingers, and a back that refuses to cooperate. My body complains, but I rise anyway. The sun peeks over the horizon at 6:30, spilling light in soft shades of pink and gold, yet it never seems to warm the hollow inside me. I make my tea, letting the steam curl around my fingers, pretending it is the embrace of someone I love, but no longer has a place here. I try to keep myself busy. I tend to my small garden outside, watering the flowers, whispering encouragement to the roses and marigolds as if they could understand me. I bake small loaves of bread to fill the house with warmth, and sometimes I write letters I will never send to my children, to the friends I once had, to the husband I lost. I have friends here. Ellie is my closest companion. Margaret and a few others sit with me in the evenings, sharing soft laughter, talking about days long gone, about grandchildren and the memories of husbands and lovers. But even these moments are tinged with sadness, because the absence of my children is always there, heavy like the humid summer air in June. I am Evelyn Montgomery. I am 82 years old. And this is my story. I was born in Charleston, South Carolina, in the summer of 1943, in a modest home with peeling white paint and a small porch that caught the morning light perfectly. My parents, Louise and Harold, had little in the way of wealth, but they gave me everything I could have ever needed: love, guidance, courage, and the quiet confidence that I could face the world. Summers were magical. My small hands held my father's as we skipped stones across the river, our laughter mingling with the splash of water. My mother, her apron damp from washing clothes, hummed as she sat on the porch, her eyes soft with love and pride. Those sounds, smells, and touches etched themselves into me, forming the foundation of who I would become. I grew up learning kindness, patience, and discipline. School started at 7. School became my sanctuary. I loved learning every book, every lesson. And it was there, in the echoing halls and sunlit classrooms, and in college, I met Robert, my classmate, my partner, my love. A quiet boy, a gentle smile, and eyes that held a kindness I had never known before. Our love was slow, tentative, careful. Notes passed in secrecy, stolen glances across classrooms, walks under magnolia trees where our hands brushed, sparks that made my heart race. We married when I was 24. The ceremony was simple, but perfect in its own way. Sunlight flooded the church at exactly 3:15 in the afternoon. My mother adjusted my veil, whispering advice, and my father's hand trembled slightly as he held mine. Robert's hand was steady in mine. His eyes held promises that would last a lifetime. Together, we built a home filled with warmth, laughter, and the occasional chaos of raising children. 3 children came into our lives: Emily, Clara, and Daniel. I poured myself into them completely. Letters, numbers, manners, compassion, resilience. I tried to teach them everything I had learned, everything I knew they would need to face the world. I wanted them to grow capable, confident, kind, and strong. And for a time, everything was as I had dreamed. Soon, our greatest joy arrived: children. First Emily, bright and curious, always reaching for the sky. Then Clara, gentle yet determined, her laughter filling every corner of the house. And finally, Daniel, mischievous and kind, with a heart as big as his smile. I remember waking at 5:30 every morning to prepare breakfast for them: oatmeal, toast, honey, fresh fruits, laying it out in neat little bowls, careful to cut their toast into perfect triangles, just the way Emily liked. I would watch the sun rise through the kitchen window, the pink and gold spilling across the wooden floor, and feel a quiet pride in the life we had built. After breakfast, I would walk them to the bus stop, holding their little hands, brushing back their hair, making sure each coat was buttoned, each shoe tied. Be kind, be careful, be curious, I whispered to them, not knowing that decades later, those words would echo back in ways I could never have imagined. Our home was alive with life. Sunday mornings smelled of fresh bread, and the children's laughter echoed off walls painted warm cream. At night, Robert and I would sit together on the porch, watching the stars stretch across the sky, talking quietly about our hopes for our children. And we were happy, truly happy. Even when life threw its punches, we leaned on each other. The days were full but joyous. I ironed their clothes meticulously, laid out their lunches with small notes tucked inside, and made sure every night, when we sat down together, that dinner was warm, the table set with care, the little candles flickering as we talked about school, friends, and dreams. Robert and I shared the load, laughter over spilled milk, small victories in school performances, weekend walks to the park, tiny victories in parenting. Even chores became moments of connection, folding laundry together, cleaning the windows, tending the tiny garden in the backyard. And every evening, when the children had gone to bed, Robert and I would sit by the window with tea, watching the sunset, the sky shifting from gold to orange to deep indigo. We spoke softly of hopes, of the next day, of the little ways we were teaching them to be good, kind people. Sometimes I would think, this is enough. This is happiness. Life continued this way for many years. The children grew, and I continued my daily rituals: sunrise, breakfast, school preparations, chores, cooking, laughter, bedtime stories. I watched them learn, stumble, fall, rise again. I guided them through friendships, heartbreaks, exams, and triumphs. I watched them graduate, start careers, and eventually find partners of their own. And each time, my heart swelled with pride. I had done my job. I had loved fully. Even the small moments stayed with me. The smell of fresh pancakes on a Sunday morning, the way the sunlight hit Clara's hair as she read at the kitchen table, Daniel's quiet "thank you" when I brought him a hot cup of cocoa after football practice. These were the moments I lived for, the moments that made the years of sleepless nights, aching back, and endless patience worth everything. We were happy. Robert and I were happy. Our home was alive with warmth, love, and laughter. Every sunrise brought hope. Every sunset brought a quiet satisfaction. The rhythm of our days, the careful breakfast preparations, the walks to school, the homework supervision, the shared chores, the bedtime stories, was a melody of love. A melody that I cherished. After years of raising them, watching them stumble and rise, I finally saw the fruits of my labor. Emily became a strong, intelligent woman, always so meticulous, so sharp, with a heart that could not ignore anyone in need. Clara, with her gentle determination, had a way of making people feel seen, her laugh infectious, her kindness remembered by all who met her. And Daniel, mischievous as a child, grew into a man with a steady hand and a caring soul. But life has a way of changing the landscape of love and attention. Our children grew, found partners, and carved their own paths. Their weddings were beautiful, though I had shed many tears of joy and of disbelief that my little ones had grown so fast. Emily married into a family that valued her mind and spirit. Clara found a partner who matched her quiet strength, and Daniel married a woman who embraced him completely. I still remember standing at each wedding, dressed in soft pastel gowns, watching their faces glow, feeling my chest tighten with love so strong it hurt. Then came grandchildren. Little feet ran across our home, Tiny hands grasped mine. Giggles filled the air once more. Emily's daughter, Sophie, would tug at my apron while I baked cookies, insisting on helping even when flour covered her tiny nose. Clara's son, Leo, loved to curl up in my lap, asking me to tell the stories I had told their parents, the tales of childhood adventures, of love, of the sunsets I had loved so much. Daniel's twins, Max and Lily, brought chaos and joy in equal measure, spilled milk, toppled chairs, scraped knees, and laughter that could fill the emptiest corners of a house. Every day was a rhythm of care and love. I would wake at 5:30, long before sunrise, to the soft pink and orange glow spilling over the horizon. I prepared breakfast for everyone, pancakes for Sophie, scrambled eggs for Leo, oatmeal for the twins, each with a small note tucked under their bowls. Be kind, be brave, be yourself. I would pour coffee for the adults, tea for myself, and sit by the kitchen window watching the world awaken. After breakfast, the children and grandchildren would head out school, work, appointments. I tidied the house meticulously, folded laundry, ironed clothes, watered the plants, swept the floors, and arranged the living room so it was welcoming for the next visit. Evenings were the sweetest. We would all gather again, laughter around the table, stories shared over soup and bread, Sophie proudly showing her drawings, Leo performing little skits, Max and Lily chasing each other across the carpet, the shadows of the setting sun painting gold across the room. Robert and I would often sit together afterward, hands intertwined, watching our family scatter and regroup, feeling the warmth of our work manifest in these small, perfect moments. We did well, I would whisper to him, my voice low, but filled with pride. And he would nod, eyes misty, holding my hand a little tighter. Those years, when our children were young adults, married, thriving, and carrying forward the lessons we had taught them, were some of the happiest of our lives. Time, though, moves forward whether we are ready or not. Robert grew older, his steps slower, his laughter quieter. One morning, I woke to find him pale in his chair, a small smile lingering on his lips as if he were trying to comfort me from beyond his strength. A week later, he was gone. The house, once echoing with the combined voices of children, grandchildren, and love, felt hollow in a way I had never known. After Robert passed, life did not change overnight. Emily still called every morning, often sending Sophie along with little gifts she knew I would cherish. Clara would stop by with Leo in tow, staying just long enough to sit with me, sharing small jokes that made me laugh through the tears. Daniel, though busier now with his work and twins, still made time for a Sunday visit. Max and Lily would tug at my hands, insisting I watch them play in the garden. Those first months, I held on to every smile, every hug, every shared cup of tea. The house still smelled of fresh flowers and warm bread, and my heart still carried the warmth of my children's voices. I would rise at 5:30 as always, preparing breakfast for the family, eggs, toast, oatmeal, and set the table with the same care I had when they were young. Even if some plates went untouched, the act itself was a comfort. I wanted the house to feel alive, to remind everyone that here, love still lingered. Time, however, is patient but relentless. Small changes crept in almost imperceptibly. The rhythm of visits began to change. Emily's calls became less frequent, sometimes arriving late in the evening, her voice rushed. Clara would glance at her watch more often, leaving sooner than before, her smiles no longer reaching her eyes fully. Daniel's visits shortened. Weekends filled with school events and errands left little room for the quiet moments we had once treasured. I tried not to notice, telling myself they were busy, that adulthood had responsibilities I could not control. But slowly, the hollow moments multiplied. Breakfast prepared with care sat untouched. Plates I had set remained clean, uneaten. The laughter of grandchildren became echoes in memory rather than present reality. The son-in-law, who had once been warm and attentive, began to visit less. At first, it was just one weekend missed here or there. I reminded myself it was work or travel. But then came a Saturday when Emily arrived without her husband, Sophie clinging to her skirt. Clara came alone more often. Leo's father caught up in his own schedule. Even Daniel's children, who once ran into my arms as if I were the center of their world, now barely looked up from their phones or toys. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Every morning, I woke with the same thought hovering like a shadow over my head. Maybe today they will come. I would move through my home with careful steps, tidying, arranging, preparing not for myself, but for the children who had once made every day brighter, who had once made this house a home. The sunlight streaming through the living room window caught the dust in motes, like tiny stars frozen in time. I would pause, squinting against the brightness, imagining their laughter, their voices echoing as they ran from one room to another. I would set the breakfast table exactly as they had liked, silverware polished, napkins folded, plates warm, though I knew, deep down, that they would never sit here again as they once had. Ellie visited frequently, her presence a balm to my loneliness. She would bring tea, sometimes biscuits, and always her steady ear. Evelyn, she would say softly, "You have given them everything. They are not returning because of them, not you. You must find your own peace while you wait." I nodded each time, but inside, hope clung stubbornly, a thin thread that refused to break. I began talking to the walls more often, sharing my thoughts aloud. Sometimes I would say their names, hoping the sound would reach them somehow. Daniel, Clara, Emily, where are you? My voice would tremble, but no one answered. Only the quiet, heavy quiet, pressing in from every corner of the house. It was a quiet that weighed on my shoulders, wrapped around my chest, and seeped into my bones. Evenings were the hardest. I would sit in the same chair I had once shared with Robert, the one by the window that overlooked the garden. The wind carried the scent of jasmine and honeysuckle, blooming late for no reason but beauty, and I would close my eyes, imagining them stepping out of the car, carrying gifts, laughter spilling over like the soft light that fell on the lawn. Evenings were the hardest. I would sit in the same chair I had once shared with Robert, the one by the window that overlooked the garden. I kept myself busy, though. The chores became my companions, folding laundry, dusting shelves, polishing silver, tending to the garden that Robert and I had planted together. I would imagine the children walking through the rows of tulips, Emily stopping to pick a flower, Clara laughing at Daniel's clumsiness as he stumbled over the garden hose. The house felt alive for a few moments, and then the silence returned, pressing heavier than before. I began writing letters I never intended to send. To each child, I poured my heart, recounting memories of birthdays, of scraped knees and first school days, of late nights spent helping with homework, of the love I had poured into every corner of this house. I would fold the letters neatly, tie them with ribbons, and place them in a box under my bed. It gave me some sense of release, as if the words could float into the air and reach them somehow. I noticed small things in the house that reminded me of them constantly. A tiny sock left behind in the laundry room. A half-finished puzzle under the coffee table. Daniel's favorite mug on the counter, stained from years of use. Emily's sketchbook, pages curling at the edges. Clara's music playlist still humming softly on the living room speaker. Each object was a thread in the tapestry of memory, and each thread pulled at my heart until it ached. Meals became ritualistic, almost ceremonial. I would prepare exactly what they liked: roasted chicken with herbs, mashed potatoes creamy enough for Daniel, Emily's favorite lemon tarts, Clara's salad with the dressing she always requested. I placed the plates on the table, polished the cutlery, arranged the glasses. I would sit, pretending they were there, pretending that the laughter would return. I spoke to the empty chairs as if they could hear me. "Eat well," I whispered. "I'm waiting. I'm always waiting." Sometimes I would try to distract myself. I read books I had long neglected, tracing the words with my finger, imagining the characters walking through the same streets the children had played on as toddlers. I listened to music that had once filled the house with joy. But everything, every note, every line was just a reminder of what had gone, of the family I had built and that now lived far away, beyond my reach. I started counting days. Small, Deliberate rituals marked the passage of time. Every morning, I would open the calendar, noting the number of days since their last visit. 30, 31, 32, each number a quiet accusation, a reminder of absence. I counted the calls I made 15, 16, 17, each unanswered, each one a silent wound. I whispered their names to myself like a mantra, hoping the repetition might draw them closer, though I knew it was only my hope keeping me alive. I began to notice other things, subtle signs that life continued beyond my walls, without me. Cars passing on the street, neighbors chatting through fences, laughter spilling from windows across the lane. It was a cruel contrast. Their world moved on, and I remained frozen in expectation, trapped between hope and heartbreak. Ellie became my confidant. She would sit beside me in the quiet evenings, holding my hand, reminding me of my strength. They may not come, Evelyn, but you are still here. You still have yourself. Don't let them take that from you. And I tried. I really tried. But the ache of being forgotten by those I had nurtured, guided, and loved above all else, it was a constant, gnawing companion. Some nights, I would dream of them. I would see Daniel walking into the room, his face smiling, but just as I reached for him, he would vanish. Clara's laughter would echo down the hallway, but the moment I turned, she would be gone. Emily would call my name from the garden, but when I ran to her, only the wind and the rustling leaves remained. I woke each morning with tears on my cheeks, silent tears, heavy and unrelenting. I began leaving small signs that I was thinking of them. Fresh flowers on the porch, freshly baked bread cooling on the counter, notes with little reminders of happy memories, but still nothing. Not a single call, not a single visit. And yet hope remained, fragile as a spider's web, shimmering in the sunlight, refusing to break. Every day was the same. Every hour, every minute ticked past, and I remained alone. My routine became my lifeline. Rise, clean, cook, write, remember, hope. The house, the garden, the silverware, the photographs, they were all witnesses to my waiting. They knew my heart, even if my children did not. And so I wait still, waiting for a knock on the door, for a car to roll down the driveway, for voices that may never come. Every day I remind myself, I am Evelyn. I am here. I have lived, loved, sacrificed, and survived. And though the world may have moved on without me, I remain, waiting, remembering, hoping. The morning sunlight poured gently through the curtains, painting golden stripes across the worn wooden floor. I rose at 5:30 a.m., as I had done for decades, my bones creaking with every step. My hands, worn and wrinkled, trembled slightly as I brushed my long silver hair into a neat bun. The mirror reflected an 82-year-old woman, proud yet fragile, eyes shadowed from restless nights, yet still glimmering with a hope that my children might walk through the door. I moved carefully, my back complaining as I bent to straighten the tablecloth, smoothing out the wrinkles that seemed to appear overnight. Today was Mother's Day, and though my children hadn't come in years, I still prepared the house as if they would. It was a ritual, a thread connecting me to the life that once was. I tied my hair back, long silver waves braided loosely to keep them from falling into my face. I chose a simple, pale blue dress, not fancy, but neat, the color soft against the lines of my skin. I stood in front of the mirror, brushing my hands over my dress, adjusting the collar, straightening my posture. I whispered to myself, maybe today will be different. Maybe today. The words trailed off into the quiet, unbroken by any sound from the outside world. I went to the kitchen and lit the small lamp above the stove, letting its warm light chase away the early morning chill. I brewed coffee, its aroma filling the room, strong, bitter, comforting. I set the table carefully, the white linen napkins pressed perfectly, polished silverware gleaming, plates arranged for everyone, even if not all would be used. I prepared breakfast with love, oatmeal sprinkled with brown sugar and cinnamon for Daniel, soft scrambled eggs with a touch of butter for Emily, toast with honey for Clara, and a little cocoa in my own cup. On each plate, I tucked a small note. I love you. Be kind. Be brave. Remember home. I imagined the children rushing in, Sophie and Leo giggling and tugging at their parents' hands, little footprints scuffing the polished wooden floor. I pictured Daniel's laughter, Emily's gentle voice, Clara's warmth. I smiled softly, tears welling in my eyes, and whispered to the empty rooms, I'm ready for you. Hours passed slowly. 9 a.m., no footsteps. 10:30 a.m., no voices. I busied myself with small tasks, folded laundry, polished the silver, watered the garden that Robert had loved so dearly. I set the chairs just so, imagining them gathered around the table. 12 p.m. sunlight flooded the living room, highlighting the dust in the corners, the small imperfections of a house I had cared for all my life. But nothing could fill the emptiness. I lingered by the window, looking out at the driveway. My eyes searched every passing car, every shadow that fell across the yard. My heart beat faster at the smallest sound, a distant laugh, the rumble of a vehicle, even the soft chirping of birds, anything that might signal their arrival. I poured a cup of tea and sat at the table, the warmth seeping into my hands, grounding me. Ellie had called earlier, her voice soft and comforting. Evelyn, don't set your heart too high today. They may not come. I had nodded, though the words barely registered. I understood her caution, but my hope refused to be silenced. I had waited too many days, too many years, to let it fade entirely. As I prepared the small dishes, my mind wandered back through decades of memory. I saw Robert's gentle smile, his hand resting on mine as we guided our children through first steps, first words, first days of school. I remembered the late nights spent reading stories, the scraped knees I had kissed better, the lessons I had repeated tirelessly until they absorbed them. Every plate, every folded napkin, every flower on the table carried a fragment of those memories, a whisper of love that had never been returned in kind. I moved slowly through the house, checking each room. The bedrooms were neat, though empty, each one holding traces of the children's youth, a music box, a tiny jacket, a book with scribbled notes. The living room smelled faintly of lemon polish and jasmine, the scent lingering in the air like a ghost. I adjusted the curtains so the sunlight would fall evenly, the room bright but soft, welcoming as though expecting them. Minutes turned into hours, and the clock seemed to stretch each second into an eternity. I kept glancing at the driveway, imagining their faces, Daniel's easy smile, Clara's laughter, Emily's soft voice calling my name. I poured another cup of tea, stirred it slowly, and listened to the quiet hum of the house. I could hear my own breathing, steady but tense, the slow thump of my heart echoing in the stillness. I tried to fill the silence with small tasks. I polished the silverware again, adjusted the flowers, moved the plates slightly to the left, just as Clara had always preferred. I checked the oven. The bread was perfect, golden and soft, and I brushed a few crumbs from the counter with care. Each gesture was a meditation, a silent prayer that today might bring the family back together, even for a fleeting moment. I found myself speaking to the empty chairs, to the absent voices that had once filled this space. I'm waiting for you, I whispered. I've always been waiting. Just come home. Just once. My voice was soft, almost swallowed by the walls, but the act of speaking gave me a small comfort, as if saying the words aloud might make them real. By late afternoon, the sunlight had shifted, casting long shadows across the floor. I stood in the kitchen, wiping my hands on a towel, my heart pounding with the tension of expectation. Every car that drove past sent a shiver through me. Every moment of silence felt heavier than the last. My body ached, my knees sore from hours of standing, my back stiff, but the ache was nothing compared to the hollow weight in my chest. I sat down at the table once more, taking a slow sip of tea, staring at the empty seats. The table was ready. The house was ready. And I was ready. But the driveway remained empty. No laughter, no voices, no car rolling up. only the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze and the distant hum of life beyond the gates. My hands trembled slightly as I set the cup down, staring at the three empty chairs. And in that silence, I realized how much hope and love I had invested in those absent figures, how fragile the thread of anticipation had become, and how alone I truly was. The sun began to set, casting a golden glow across the table, the flowers, the silverware. Shadows lengthened, reaching across the room like fingers, and I held my breath, imagining what would come next. Would they arrive? Or would the silence stretch into yet another night? I could feel the days slipping away, the moments I had counted so carefully vanishing like grains of sand. And still I waited. My heart, fragile but persistent, clung to the possibility that they might walk through the door, that somehow, this day, the silence would be broken and the echoes of laughter would return to the house one more time. But as the shadows deepened and the sky faded to dusk, I understood something painfully clear. Hope could sustain me, but it could also leave me stranded in the ache of expectation. And in that ache, I sat, poised between the love I had given and the absence that defined me, wondering if anyone would ever truly come back. I called them Emily, Clara, Daniel 20 times that morning. Each call went unanswered. Voicemails left, my voice trembling yet soft, trying not to sound desperate, trying to hold on to dignity. "I've prepared breakfast," I said softly into the air. "I'm waiting for you. Please come." Finally, the doorbell rang. My heart raced. I opened the door to see them, my children, dressed in the finest clothes, the faint smell of expensive perfume and cologne in the air. Their faces were polite, stiff, controlled. Sophie and Leo clung silently to their mothers, their eyes wide but confused. Daniel's twins barely looked at me, their attention already on gadgets in their hands. "Mother," Emily said, placing a light, almost perfunctory hand on my shoulder. "We're here." I smiled, tears spilling, expecting the warmth, the chaos, the love. Instead, they walked past me into the kitchen, talking quietly among themselves, ignoring the carefully laid breakfast and the small notes. My chest tightened, a sense of dread washing over me. Then Clara almost casually said, "Mother," about the gold and property. My hands froze. My heart pounded so violently it was almost painful. I realized then that this was the plan. They were not here for me. They were here for my possessions, for what Robert and I had built together. My throat tightened and my vision blurred with tears. I wanted to scream, to stop them, to make them see that love cannot be measured in gold. But I did nothing. I signed the papers. I transferred the jewelry. I handed over the keys to the home I had raised them in, the home filled with laughter, homework, arguments, and memories. I told myself, let them be happy. Let them feel secure. My own happiness mattered less. Their smiles were stiff but satisfied. They left that evening, the echo of their departure following me like a shadow. 12 days later, strangers arrived. Officials, paperwork, cold instructions. The house is sold. Please leave. My voice shook as I tried calling again 20 times. Emily answered, her tone harsh. "Mother, leave the house. We told you it's done. Go." I pleaded, begged, reminded them of the memories, of the love, of the decades spent nurturing, teaching, sacrificing. But my words fell into a void. Clara's phone remained silent. Daniel never picked up. The children, now grown, unaware or unwilling, stayed away. The house, my life, had been erased by those I had loved most. With no other options, I packed a small bag, hugged the few belongings I could not bear to leave behind, and went to my dear friend Ellie's home. She greeted me with gentle warmth, a soft hug, and a pot of tea. We talked quietly, sharing stories of love, of children, of losses that no one else could understand. But even in this solace, I felt the emptiness gnawing. I walked the garden, tending flowers and shrubs, each one a living memory of Robert and our family. The birds sang, the wind whispered, but the silence from my children weighed heavier than ever. Finally, after weeks, Daniel drove up late one afternoon. "Mother, get ready," he said, his voice flat. "We're taking you home." Hope surged through me, fragile and bright. I dressed carefully, smoothing my blouse, brushing my hair. I imagined conversations, laughter, warmth restored. But as we drove, I spoke about Sophie, Leo, the twins, the garden, the house, and silence answered me. At the gates of the old home, I asked hesitantly, voice trembling, "Am I staying here now?" "Yes," Daniel said flatly. "This will be your home. We will pick you up sometimes." I protested, tears spilling freely, but why? Why leave me here alone? No answer. The door closed, and I was alone again. 3 years have passed. Each morning, I rise at sunrise, brush my hair, prepare breakfast as if expecting the laughter, the chaos, the love I once knew. Margaret visits, bringing tea, her stories, her soft presence. But hope is a fragile thread. I tell my story over and over to friends, to strangers, to anyone who will listen, hoping that perhaps someone, somewhere, might hear, might understand, might knock on this door and bring back the warmth of family I had given my life to. And still I wait. For the past 3 years, this old house has been my entire world. 3 long years of mornings and nights, measured by the light through the windows, the ticking of the clock, and the silence that no voice can fill. I wake early, usually around 5:30 a.m., long before the sun rises, and lie in bed listening to the quiet. The air is cool, the faint scent of wood and dust clinging to the corners. I take a deep breath, feeling the ache in my knees and the stiffness in my back, and remind myself, one more day. You can do one more day. By 6 a.m., the soft orange glow of sunrise begins to peek through the lace curtains. I sit at the small table by the window, a cup of warm tea in my hands. I watch the sky slowly lighten, the first birds flitting across the garden and the dew sparkling on the roses. Sometimes I close my eyes and imagine the laughter that once filled this house, my children running through the halls, Robert's laughter echoing from the kitchen. It is a memory that both warms and breaks me. Breakfast is a quiet ritual, one I insist on for myself. I make a small meal, porridge with a sprinkle of cinnamon, fresh fruit, and toast with butter. I set the table neatly, a vase of flowers from the garden in the center. Even if no one sits across from me, I arrange everything as if they might. Sometimes I whisper into the empty room, "I am still here. I am waiting for you." The words hang in the air, and the only reply is the faint creak of the floorboards as I move around. I spend hours tending the house, dusting the shelves, folding the laundry, cleaning the windows until the sun pierces through in sharp, golden beams. Every action is a connection to life, a way to remind myself that I am still here, still living. I water the plants in the garden carefully, trimming roses and daisies, speaking to them softly. "Grow strong," I murmur. "Grow beautiful," even when no one watches. Each plant is a small comfort, a symbol of the love and care I once poured into my family. Afternoons are the hardest. The house feels emptier then. The quiet stretches, almost unbearable, and memories arrive unbidden. I think of birthdays past, Sunday mornings with pancakes, evenings spent reading stories aloud. I remember my children's small hands clutching mine, their laughter filling every room. Now, the rooms are hollow, the laughter only echoes in my mind. I cry sometimes silently, letting the tears fall onto my hands as I kneel by the window, watching shadows stretch across the garden. They weren't loud tears, they were silent tears. Ellie, my dear friend, visits twice a week. Her visits are the highlights of my weeks. She brings tea, biscuits, and stories of her own family, and we sit together in the sunroom. She notices the little things, a tear that glistens in my eye as I recall a memory, the subtle slump of my shoulders, the longing in my gaze. She listens, really listens. I tell her about my children's achievements, the grand weddings, the beautiful grandchildren, how proud I am of them. And though pride and joy warm me, a quiet ache gnaws at my heart, the ache of absence, of time lost, of visits that once were frequent but became rare, and for a few hours, I feel less invisible. She listens when I speak, her eyes reflecting understanding and sorrow, and I realize that even in the absence of my children, someone still cares. But as soon as she leaves, the quiet returns, pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. Evenings are long and lonely. I light a lamp, sit in my favorite chair, and read old letters or write notes I will never send. I cook small dinners for myself, tasting the flavors that remind me of family meals past. Sometimes I set an extra plate, hoping, imagining that perhaps someone will come. The house feels different at night, shadows gather in the corners, the creaking floorboards become companions, and the distant hum of the street outside feels like a reminder of the life I no longer share with those I love. Yet, despite it all, hope remains. I look out the window at the garden, at the sunrise, at the wind moving gently through the trees, and whisper to myself, one day, maybe, someone will come. One day, maybe, someone will knock on the door and see me again. The hope is fragile, but it is there, steady like the heartbeat I feel in my chest. I wait for it, nurture it, because it is all I have left that connects me to the world beyond these walls. Even in silence, I keep my small joys. I knit blankets for the local shelter, fold the laundry neatly, water the flowers, and talk to them like old friends. I tell them my stories, my dreams, my quiet sorrows. I walk slowly through the hallways, remembering every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every word of encouragement I whispered to my children. And though they are gone, though they have not returned, I survive. I breathe. I live. Sometimes I sit by the window for hours, watching the clouds drift across the sky, imagining my children's faces, remembering the love that once surrounded me. And sometimes, just sometimes, I imagine that perhaps someone will hear my story, that my voice, my longing, my patience, my pain might reach a child or a parent who feels the same. That they might understand what it is like to wait, to hope, to love, and be left behind. This is my life in the old home, a mixture of routine, reflection, quiet labor, and fragile hope. A life measured not by the presence of others, but by the endurance of memory, the strength of love, and the fragile persistence of hope that one day, maybe, someone will return. The mornings in the old home remain quiet, but over time, I began to notice little changes in my own rhythm, small, almost imperceptible signs that life continues even in absence. I still wake at 5:30 a.m., the light of dawn slipping gently across the wooden floorboards. The sky over the horizon glows faintly pink, then orange, then gold, and I pause in my small morning ritual to breathe it in, feeling the warmth of the rising sun against my face. I've learned to notice everything: the gentle sway of the trees outside, the songs of early birds, the faint hum of the distant road. Breakfast has become more meditative. I make my porridge, buttered toast, and fresh fruit, arranging the plate as though someone might sit with me. I whisper stories into the empty room, stories of childhood, of my own youth, of how I met Robert in college, the way he made me laugh, how he held my hand as we walked across the campus lawn. I speak these memories aloud because even if no one listens, I want my voice to carry somewhere. Sometimes a gentle breeze through the open window seems like an answer, like the world acknowledging my existence. After breakfast, I walk slowly through the garden. The flowers bloom wildly now, untamed but beautiful. Roses, daisies, hydrangeas, I touch each one, speak to them softly. Grow, even when no one sees you, I tell them. In this garden, I find companionship. In their resilience, I find myself. I think of my grandchildren, the ones I raised with care and love, the ones who once ran through this house, their laughter spilling into every corner. I close my eyes and remember their small hands clinging to mine, their little giggles, their first steps, their first words. Evenings are the heaviest. The house is bathed in the soft glow of lamps, casting long shadows across the walls. I set the table for one, sometimes for two, imagining that a child might come. I prepare the food meticulously: rice, vegetables, a small piece of chicken, remembering the meals I once cooked for family gatherings, the laughter around the table, the chatter and stories. I eat slowly, savoring every bite, and silently hope that one day someone might sit across from me, sharing this quiet ritual once more. Sometimes I find objects left behind by my children, a book, a scarf, a photo frame. I trace the edges gently, remembering the moments we shared. I look at their photographs on the mantelpiece, watching their faces, the light in their eyes when they were young, eager, full of life. I think of the times when we laughed together, the holidays celebrated, the quiet Sundays at home. Each memory is both a comfort and a pang of sorrow. I also keep myself busy with small acts of kindness. I knit blankets for the local shelter, fold the laundry carefully, polish the silver, water the plants. Every action is a thread connecting me to life outside these walls. I speak aloud when I am alone, telling the house my hopes, my fears, my love for those who have left. I am still here, I whisper. I am still waiting. Sometimes the wind carries my words through the old corridors, and for a moment, it feels as if the house itself answers. There is a peculiar kind of hope that emerges in the smallest things, a bird landing on the windowsill, a neighbor waving from afar, a note slipped under the door by someone who cares. These are small sparks in a world of quiet, yet they sustain me. I imagine my children, imagining perhaps that one day they will remember. That one day they might return, might sit with me, might see how patiently I have waited. And still, I hold on to my daily routines, the same meals, the same garden walks, the same silent conversations with the house. In this rhythm, I find a fragile sense of control, a thread of stability. The loneliness remains, pressing and heavy, but hope, as delicate as morning light, continues to shine in the corners of my heart. This is my life now, filled with memories, rituals, and a persistent hope that perhaps one day, someone I love will walk through the door. I live between the echoes of laughter past and the fragile whispers of what might still come. And though 3 long years have passed, I wait, because hope, even in its smallest form, is still worth holding. I never saw them again. Not really. The children who had once filled my world with laughter and chaos, who had once been the center of my life, became echoes in my memory, shadows that reminded me of love and loss alike. And I carried on because I had no other choice. I carried on because I had lived fully, loved deeply, and survived. And in that survival, I found a strange, quiet triumph, not over them, not against them, but over the sorrow that had threatened to consume me. I had been abandoned, yes. Forgotten, yes. But I was still here, still breathing, still Evelyn, still capable of love, of care, of life. And that finally was enough. For the past 3 or 4 years, this is how my life in the old home has been. I wake up slowly, careful with my joints, and make myself a cup of tea that I sip while sitting by the window, watching the sunlight stretch across the floor. I tend to the small garden outside, watering flowers I've grown, and sometimes I bake bread, just so the house smells alive. I walk the corridors of the old home, greeting the staff and sharing stories with Ellie and a few other friends I've made here, women who understand what it is to wait, to hope, and to feel invisible sometimes. We laugh softly, we share small joys, we play cards, or read together. And yet, no matter how comforting these moments are, the wait never ends. I still think of my children. I still imagine their voices, their faces. I still hope that one day, maybe, they will remember and come back. Before we end, I want to share this with you softly. This story is not just my story. It is the story of every parent who has waited, hoping, praying that their children will come back, that they will notice the love and sacrifices we made. I tell it here so my children might hear it, so it might reach them even if they have forgotten. And if not them, then maybe it reaches someone else, anyone whose parents are in old homes alone, waiting quietly, day after day, hoping to be seen, to be remembered, to be loved. We wait in silence. We ache in silence. But our love, our patience, our sacrifices, they are real. And they deserve to be heard. If you are one of those children or someone who knows parents waiting, share your thoughts, your feelings, your stories in the comments. Let this story reach hearts. Let it remind everyone that even when we are apart, even when the waiting is long, the love of a parent is never gone.